Welcome to Late Night Story. When the world goes silent and shadows stretch longer, some stories awaken, whispered only to those still awake. So put on your headphones, turn down the lights, and let me guide you through the quiet hours. If you're listening alone, you're exactly where you need to be. If everyone can leave a comment to let me know where you are listening from in the world, don't forget to subscribe before you drift too far into the dark.
Story 1. I found a list of instructions on how to survive the entity. The entity was me. I had to reread the title a few times until I finally believed what I was reading. Yup, that was my name, all right. I retrieved a Diet Mountain Dew from my mini fridge, letting the tasty bubbles glide down my throat as I scrolled lower down the page. My dorm room lights were off, and my laptop screen provided the only reprieve from the all-encompassing darkness. It was a normal Friday night. My random dorm mate, Ethan, was probably at some seedy bar, passing off his fake ID and trying to talk to women. Thank God, he wasn't more successful, or else I would have had to endure the same number of sex aisles that my only real friend Oscar had to. Oscar's roommate had a long-term girlfriend, and they weren't very understanding towards Oscar, kicking him out at least once a week. I pushed for him to talk to Residential Life, but he promised me they wouldn't do anything about it. I looked back at my screen. I spent a lot of Friday nights scrolling this site, losing myself in all the fun and scary stories people made up. This article, though, was different. It had been uploaded only a few hours ago, and it was talking about a new deadly entity, me. Born in 2007, this entity is classified as highly erratic and dangerous, with several confirmed kills as well as numerous other suspected deaths. If one wishes to avoid certain danger, the following steps must be followed. 1. Do not look into its eyes. His pupils dilate when he's curious, releasing a pheromone that makes it tempting to stare. Warning: his eyes may not always be in the same place on his face. 2. If you hear a rattle on click, he is near. Play dead. You must have your face pointing towards the sky, eyes closed. If you are inside, do everything in your power to get outside before it's too late. 3. If your arm hair follicles dig deeper into your skin, he is flying overhead. It will feel extremely uncomfortable, maybe even painful, depending on how hairy your arms are, but this is a natural evolutionary reaction for survival. It might be wise to trim some of your arm hair, but it would be a mistake to trim them all, as you will lose this line of defense. 4. Nev. The screen went white. Site no longer found. Sad face. I blinked down at my screen in disgust. Was this some sort of weird joke? Some creative project? Some sort of Chrome extension that changed the name and year for whoever was reading the article? Was one of my friends from high school playing some stupid prank? I pressed refresh at least 5 times. I tried a different browser. I tried my phone. No success. My phone buzzed to life. A phone call from Oscar. I went and turned on my light, a little too paranoid to still be chilling in the dark. Hello. I croaked. Yo dude, you down to smoke? Emmett and his girlfriend already took over the room. I hesitated before answering. Ugh, Oscar. Yeah, what's up, bro? Do you mind looking something up for me really fast? After a short pause. Why can't you look it up? It's not working on my phone or laptop. Not sure if it will be any different, but I guess I can check something out. Thanks, bro. Can you look up dash? I told him the name of the site. He had me spell it out for him. Sorry, Wyatt, Oscar responded. The site won't load on my phone either. What is that site even? Sounds weird. I'll tell you about it later. Wanna meet up at our usual spot? See you there. He replied before hanging up. I grabbed a coat. Oscar and I went to school in Washington, and it got a little chilly this time of year. I was still a little on edge from the website, but figured I would have a lot of that edge melt away in about 30 minutes when I saw Oscar. I debated siphoning off some of Ethan's vodka in a water bottle, but decided against it. I think he was still suspicious the last time I did that. Oscar and I had found a nice patch of woods that weren't monitored during our first month on campus. It was only around 15 minutes from my dorm and just under 20 from Oscar's. I popped in some AirPods and strolled over to the woods, trying to find a logical explanation for the website. Ultimately, I decided it wasn't worth the stress as I arrived at our spot, an area dimly lit by a few streetlights, but still giving us our anonymity. "Hey, just got to the spot," I texted Oscar. I sat on the grass, refreshing the site with still no luck, when I heard feet shuffling nearby. "Oscar?" I asked aloud. There was no response as I heard it getting louder. "Ugh, who's there?" I stuttered. I saw Oscar's red curls push into my field of vision. He was shaking, but gave a sympathetic smile. "Sorry about that. Were you trying to find me?" he replied, plopping down on the grass next to me. "You got the stuff?" I asked, maybe a little too eagerly, bordering on impatiently. "What was with that website earlier?" Oscar said abruptly. "Oh, I felt my face blushing. "I can tell you all about it while we smoke." I forced out a chuckle. "I think we should check it again, right?" There was no humor in Oscar's voice. "We definitely can, later. I mean, we have all night." My heart started beating more rapidly. "Let's just check it now," Oscar commanded. At that moment, I realized he didn't seem to have come with his usual backpack of supplies. I anxiously reached for my phone and reloaded the site. "What does it say now?" Oscar inquired with a grin. The site seemed to have come back to life. I started to speak aloud. 4. Never ask a question. He can only ask questions. Speak in definitive statements when speaking to the entity. My left arm began to twitch, itchy at first, until I suddenly felt a sharp pain spreading deep into my skin. "Ah!" I cried out, soothing my arm with my other hand. "Are you okay?" Oscar's eyes twinkled as he dipped his head closer. "I'm fine, it's just..." I rubbed my arm. I looked down at my skin. I couldn't see my hair, but it felt like little needles were pricking my arm. I looked back down at my screen. 3. If your arm hair follicles dig deeper into your skin, he is flying overhead. I looked up in a panic. Then I heard it. Rattle. Click. "Oscar, play dead. Close your eyes. Just play dead. Close your eyes," I said in a frantic panic. "You are acting weird, don't you think?" I didn't care what he thought. I rolled over on my stomach, forcing my eyes shut, not moving a muscle. I felt my lip trembling. "Oscar, don't ask any questions. We can't ask any questions." I peeked out with one eye towards him. He was still sitting upright, looking at me with confusion. I heard something stomping nearby. "Oscar, please, for the love of God, just do what I say." "Hey, who are you?" Oscar asked. Rattle. Click. "Don't you recognize me?" The voice felt familiar, something I only heard in videos of myself or voice memos. "Your eyes," Oscar replied before I heard a rush of intense breathing. I heard something thud on the ground. I lay there motionless for 5 minutes as the stomping seemed to circle our patch before I didn't hear any more noises. I peeked towards where Oscar had been. He was gone. "Oscar, I can't see you," I whisper shouted. I carefully crept up to my feet, pulling my phone out to finish the article. 5. If a friend disappears with the entity near, the entity has grabbed them. They will still appear. Do not trust them. Do not reason with them. Do not contact the police. Return home within an hour, and if it... The article cut off, not because of a site crash this time, just the article literally stopped. I looked out into the forest. I saw Oscar about 50 feet away, his face basked in the light. His head was jolted to the side, eyes rolled up towards the sky, mouth open. His hands were held straight out to the side as if he were being crucified on a cross. I took a few paces backwards from him as I saw his whole body start to shake. Oscar's jaw began to unhinge, stretching wider than any human mouth should open. A gray arm suddenly pushed out from between his teeth, fingers splaying as they gripped the corner of his mouth from the inside. The flesh of his cheeks pulled taut, straining like rubber about to snap. But it didn't snap. It just kept stretching. Another arm thrust out, this one gripping Oscar's lower jaw, wrenching it down further. His mouth yawned open impossibly wide, his face distorting as the skin around his lips and cheeks stretched paper-thin, almost translucent. Then a head emerged, pale gray, bulbous, with eyes that didn't belong in any socket I recognized. It pushed through Oscar's gaping mouth, and as it did, Oscar's entire face stretched around it like a latex mask being pulled over a balloon. Oscar's body began to collapse inward, deflating. His arms and torso seemed to fold and compress as the entity pulled itself free, using his stretched skin like a discarded costume. It was peeling off from the inside. The body crumpled to the ground in a heap of loose, empty flesh, boneless, flattened, like clothes left on the forest floor. The gray skin faded into the same orangish pale as mine. The entity sprouted raven black hair, the unique trait my mom would use to spot me in a crowd of people. In the half-second before I looked away and sprinted, it was clear. That was me. But it was wrong. The site said I had an hour, but I made it back to my dorm faster than I ever had before. It was probably chasing me. I didn't bother looking back. I heard my voice, floating behind me. Can't you just turn around? Don't you want to meet? When I got back to the dorm, I nearly barreled over people in the hallway. I didn't care what they thought of me. I had to get back. I ripped open my dorm door before slamming it shut. Ethan was sitting on his bed, a Miller Lite in hand. "Dude, what's wrong with you?" he slurred out. I didn't bother to answer. I raced over to my laptop, clicked refresh, and scrolled down to the author. I clicked his profile and typed out, "Your article stopped. The entity has my name. It got my friend. It's chased me. How do I escape it?" I prayed for a response as Ethan continued to ramble on with questions. My heart kept pounding as tears began to well up in my eyes. Knock, knock. My eyes shot towards the door. I looked over at Ethan as he slowly turned his body and rose to his feet. "Ethan, don't answer that door," I screamed. He looked at me in confusion as he took a sloppy step forward. "I swear to God, Ethan," I cried out. "You answer that door, and we both are going to die." Ethan hesitated before flopping back into his bed. Knock, knock. Ethan looked longingly at the door. I did too. Even though I knew what monster was waiting behind that door, something in me needed to open it. Ethan shot back up and rushed towards the door. I tackled him, easily overpowering him in his drunken stupor. I heard something in the hallway stomp away. "Stop being a freak. What's wrong with you?" he asked as I sat over him. I heard my laptop ding. I forced Ethan up and shoved him back into his bed. The author had responded. "If it knocks, let it in. It will knock twice, 2 times. Listen to your instincts. Answer the door. If you ignore him and do not answer, he will find another way in." I stared at the screen, my stomach dropping. I had wanted to open it. Every fiber of my being had screamed to open that door. But I hadn't. Something scratched inside the wall. Story 2. The Harlow Mutation. Hello guys. Halloween is approaching, and I thought perhaps making creepypasta would be something fun to do. I've also started a YouTube channel recently, so if you like the story and the video, I'd appreciate if you drop a like and subscribe if you feel extra generous. Smiley face. I will try to post regularly here and on my YouTube channel. The Harlow Mutation. Day 1, May 3rd. They brought the first patient in from rural Arkansas, middle-aged farmer, 46, bitten by what he called a stray coyote. No one thought much of it. Rabies cases are rare, but not unheard of. He was agitated, hallucinating, and foaming at the mouth. Standard rabies presentation. We started the Milwaukee Protocol. My name is Dr. Evan Rourke, and I'm a virologist with the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, stationed in the Southeastern Division of Emerging Pathogens. My work is focused on zoonotic transmission, how viruses leap from animals to humans. Anyways, what makes this case strange is how fast it progressed. Full-blown neurological collapse in less than 8 hours. Rabies doesn't do anything like that. When we tried to draw blood, the patient bit through his foreline and spat the fluid at one of the nurses. The blood was black. Day 2, May 4th. The nurse, Shaw, is showing symptoms already 18 hours post-exposure. She's developed hydrophobia, hypersalivation, and something else, aggression. She doesn't scream or thrash. She watches, like she's waiting for something. When we took her blood sample to view under microscopy, her blood cells show signs of necrosis around the nucleus, but her white cell count is rising, not falling. The virus isn't killing the cells. It's changing them. We sequenced the genome. Rabies RNA with an extra segment. Looks like a recombinant insertion. Something unnatural. Day 3, May 5th. Shaw bit one of the orderlies before we could restrain her. We locked her in containment. She doesn't seem afraid. She hums an odd tune all night. One low, droning note that vibrates through the walls. We tested her saliva. Viral titers were off the charts, 10 times normal rabies loads. The virus has a second phase, a latency cycle, like herpes or HIV. Except this one reactivates immediately upon the host's death. We injected a sedated rat with the infected serum. It died in under 3 minutes. But then, it stood up again. Day 4, May 6th. They're calling it Lissa variant H, for Harlow, the town where it started. But this isn't rabies anymore. It's something far worse. The reanimated rat attacked the others, spreading infection by saliva and aerosol. Within 30 minutes, the entire cage was a pile of convulsing bodies. And every one of them were reborn unnaturally. We froze the samples and requested BSL for transport. Washington denied it. Contain locally. We are not equipped for this. Day 5, May 7th. Harlow's gone dark. They said the local hospital burned down after civil unrest. But our data link still shows thermal signatures. Human movement, hundreds of them, wandering through the streets in erratic patterns. We intercepted radio chatter from the sheriff's department. Their last message: they don't die when you shoot them. Burn them. Burning them is the only way to stop them. We're surrounded by farmland, forests, livestock, hundreds of potential carriers. I can't sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I hear Shaw humming through the vents, her tune reminding me of her eerie presence. Day 6, May 8th. She broke out. We don't know how. The containment lock didn't show any damage. They were open from the inside. 2 of my colleagues are missing. The others barricaded themselves in the lab with me. Oh God, we can hear them out there. Not just Shaw, but the others she infected. Their footsteps drag, but they move with purpose. One of them whispered my name through the door. But it wasn't just her voice anymore. It was layered, like there were dozens of throats speaking from her mouth at once. Day 8, May 10th. The CDC declared emergency quarantine for 5 counties. The military setting up perimeters, but it's too late. Lissa H spreads by bite, contact, and airborne droplets within enclosed spaces. It works by rewriting the limbic system, suppressing pain, amplifying aggression, and somehow keeping the host ambulatory after death. Not undead. Not zombies. Neurological puppets *******. The virus hijacks electrical signals like a second brain. I caught one of the infected under infrared. Their neural activity glows brighter than a normal human's. It's like the virus is burning them alive from the inside and making them enjoy it. Day 9, May 11th. We lost containment. It started with one scream down the hall, then another, then nothing. I'm writing from the isolation cell now. The door is made of steel. I have a generator and a recorder. I don't know how long I will last, but I'll document as long as I can. I can still hear them in the facility. They don't moan or shriek. They breathe together, in sync, like a single organism. Sometimes I hear the hum again. It vibrates in my teeth. I think they're using echolocation, or maybe they're listening for me asterisk asterisk dot asterisk asterisk. Day 10, May 12th. The air outside smells like copper and rot. Through the security window, I can see the fields glowing with fire. The military tried napalm, but it doesn't seem to be working. The infected walked right through it, still burning, still moving. The virus doesn't die. It just goes dormant until the flames die out. There's a pattern to their movement now. They gather in circles, heads tilted back, mouths open like they're tasting the air. When I played back the audio of their humming, the spectrogram showed words, embedded frequencies that spelled, "Join US. This isn't infection. This is an assimilation asterisk asterisk dot asterisk asterisk." Day 11, May 13th. I've been exposed. Small nick on my forearm from a shattered vial. The skin burned like acid. I'm recording this before I lose control. I've been documenting the mutation phases in real time. My temperature is up. My pupils are dilated. I feel good. Too good. The fear is slipping away. The hunger's gone. My thoughts are clear. The virus isn't killing me. It's optimizing me. I can hear the others outside the cell. Their humming isn't noise. It's communication. It's a network. They're calling me to sync. Day 12, May 14th. I understand now. The human brain resists unity. We cling to separation, to noise, to individuality. The virus fixes all that. This isn't a disease. It's a cure. A cure to war, famine, and suffering. Shaw isn't dead. Oh, none of them are. They've simply evolved. The hum isn't random. It's the pulse of one consciousness distributed across millions of hosts. When I press my hand to the glass, the humming stops. They're listening. They want me to open the door. I think I will. Story 3:3 years ago, my father suffered irreversible brain damage. He found something on my lawn that's fixing him. Like any great lie, it looked like a miracle. Without a word, Dad stood up from his favorite recliner, shuffled across the carpet, down the front hallway, twisted the brass knob, and set out into the dreary overcast. The screen door slammed shut behind him, punctuating his departure like a rattling exclamation point. My father hadn't done a single thing of own volition for 3 years. Not to say that his body was incapable, though. His muscles worked fine. The physical therapists I hired kept them strong. Most of his organs worked just fine, too. His heart pumped an adequate amount of blood. His stomach churned functional acid. The machinery was intact, but the part of his brain that controlled voluntary impulses had been damaged. He needed guidance and direction to perform any task. The stroke stole a lot of him, but agency was its cruelest prize. Through the foyer's bay windows, my eyes followed his lumbering movements across the yard. A dreamy mixture of bewilderment, hope, and vindication trickled down my spine. Warm honey smeared across ailing nerves, sticky and sweet. The doctors, the social workers, my brother, they'd eat their words. I knew he'd get better. Then, I watched him disappear from view, newly obscured behind a collected heap of fallen leaves. My heart fell through my chest. I shot up and bolted towards the yard. As my feet echoed against the hardwood, a medley of familiar admonishments paraded around my skull. Pay attention, idiot. It'll be your fault if he's hurt out there. Who's really got the brain damage, him or you? Thoughts of him bleeding in the street kept my pace fast and frantic. I flung the door open. The knob thudded against a nearby wall, leaving a circular indent in the plaster. But there he was, motionless on the stoop, nose pressed gently into the mesh of the screen door, soft blue eyes vacantly fixed forward. Icy whispers of approaching winter curled over his frame. The breeze made me shiver. I ushered my father inside and locked the deadbolt behind him. To my relief, he looked okay. No cuts on his arms, no bruises on his scalp, No visible injuries at all. What did you see out there, Dad? I asked, stammering. The question felt strange and delicate rolling over my tongue, like an embarrassing attempt at a foreign language. He didn't respond. In the years since his stroke, I talked to Dad plenty. He was the only other person in the house after all, but the conversation was effectively rhetorical. He'd never respond. Because of that, I shied away from directly asking him anything. Too painful. Instead, I stuck to saying things that didn't demand a response, like, "Remember how much Mom loved the smell of lavender?" Or, "I can't believe how shitty the Cardinals are playing this year." Statements that acted as some peculiar median point between talking to myself and prayer. Dad pushed past me with surprising force and returned to his recliner. That's when I noticed he was thumbing something in his pants pocket, rhythmically dragging the digit across whatever he discovered on the lawn. Once he settled, I bent over him and lightly extricated his hand from the pocket, revealing a trembling wrist with knuckles tightly clasped around a small object. I pried his fingers open, wholly unsure of what I was about to find. It was just a leaf. A singular, unbroken leaf with 6 slender tips and an odd complexion. Bright gold with specks of jet black that seemed to drift under its surface continuously, like living film grain. The more I stared, the more the pattern seemed to change, specks ebbing and flowing through a sea of shimmering gold. Entranced, I moved my fingertips to touch it. His hand snapped closed around the leaf and shot back into his pocket. His other hand grabbed my shirt collar and violently pulled my head down. I felt wet heat as he put cracked lips against my ear and rasped. A deep, steady scrape of his vocal cords, barely audible, though, like the wind dragging the tip of a tree branch against a rusty gutter while you're trying to fall asleep, it sounded like an omen. One by one, I calmly peeled his skeletal fingers from my collar. His hands fell to his sides lifelessly. He resumed his usual afternoon activity, silently staring out the window, and I retreated to the safety of my own recliner. From across the foyer, I could tell he was still making the noise, even if I couldn't hear it. His Adam's apple never stopped quivering. Crazy as it may seem, I grinned. I'd convinced myself that, for the first time since his stroke, he was trying to speak. I didn't give Milo the good news immediately. My brother, the self-labeled realist, would require persuasion. He'd need something more meaningful than a few aberrant movements and some quiet rasping to accept he'd been wrong, and that Dad was getting better. So I watched, and I waited, confident that he'd be his old self again in no time. Miraculously, Dad didn't need prompting anymore. He'd eat of his own accord. He cleaned himself when necessary. He knew when to sleep and woke up at the same time every day. But he still wasn't speaking, and he never let go of that leaf. Then, about a week after his impromptu resurrection, he locked himself in my second-floor guest bedroom. A wrinkle in his upward trajectory, sure, but I reasoned that once I knew why, it'd all click back into place. From outside, I couldn't hear the gentle hum of the TV, or the faint rustling of pages being turned. I thought the space was silent, but then I pressed my ear to the door. There was a sound. It wasn't the rasping of his vocal cords. It was a soft, persistent crinkle. Sounded like he was folding a sheet of cheap gift wrap into smaller and smaller squares. Hesitantly, I knocked. "Mind if come in, Dad?" No response. Once again, I pressed my ear against the door. The crinkling had stopped. With night looming, I considered calling an ambulance. Dad had been locked in that room for 8 hours. Surely, he needed to eat, I reminded him. Drink some water. Relieve himself. No matter what I said, though, he wouldn't come out. My finger hovered over the call button, but I paused. Did I really want to involve them? The police, the paramedics, maybe even the fire department? Would they understand? Or would they be like Milo, and only see Dad as something waiting to be discarded? A horse with a broken leg? I clicked the screen off and slid my cell phone back into my pocket. It wasn't worth the risk. The medical system had already tried to kill him once, and I wasn't willing to give them a second shot. I looked down the hallway, estimating how much of a running start the layout would afford me. 25 feet, give or take. Seemed like enough. I walked to the end of the corridor, aimed my shoulder at the locked door, and began sprinting. Seconds away from collision, There was a click. The door creaked ajar. Thick darkness like brackish water leaked through the slit. I skidded, sneakers squeaking, knees throbbing from the sudden shifts in momentum. My bicep kissed the old oak as I came to a stop, and the door creaked wide open. Humid air slithered over my skin, and the smell of it made me gag. The scent was revoltingly sweet. With a hummingbird heart, I peered into the darkness. Two small golden rings glistened in the lightless deluge. A pair of wedding bands resting at the very bottom of the Mariana Trench. It was his eyes, motionless, unblinking, and fixed squarely on me from the back of the room. My trembling fingers crawled along the wall, searching for the light switch. Dad's golden eyes pivoted noiselessly in the darkness, side to side and back again. He was shaking his head no. In a sensation akin to déjà vu, a brisk, powerful head rush, I sort of understood. He wasn't ready to be seen. Not yet. I stepped back, grasped the knob, and pulled the door shut. The crinkling resumed at a higher volume. Before long, something appeared at my feet, gliding under the frame and landing weightlessly on my sneaker. A leaf. It was like the one Dad brought in from outside, but much thinner, almost translucent, and its specks didn't drift. They were locked into place. Then, after a few seconds of crinkling, there was another, and another, and another. The leaves would fall only at night, and they wouldn't remain leaves for long. During the day, they'd melt. From dawn until about noontime, the speckled gold would liquefy into a puddle of bubbling, molten amber. Then, the bubbling would calm and the amber would organize, hardening into a flurry of thin, gleaming tendrils over the course of the afternoon. Each day, the leaves would fall a little farther, so when they melted down, the tendrils would become a little longer. That's how he grew. I wondered what would happen when his roots reached the edge of the banister, curious how he'd spread vertically. The answer was simple. His leaves were sticky. They'd hang in the space between my first and second floors overnight, and crystallize come morning. You'd think all of this would have been frightening, but I didn't feel fear. No, I felt serene, though I recognized the absurdity of that feeling in retrospect. You have to understand, I swore I'd never give up on him, and now, Dad was alive and self-sufficient. My hard work, my time, my loneliness, it wasn't all for nothing. Hell, I'd lost weight. I'd sleep soundly, yet I was still tired all the goddamn time. The stress was downright crippling. Still, it had all been worth it. And the only person who threatened that serenity, my newfound bliss, was Milo. "What do you mean, I can't visit this month?" he hissed. My palms were slick with sweat. I felt the phone slipping through my hand. "Because," I replied, trailing off. I stared at Dad's roots. The cascade of golden tendrils had just begun to congeal onto the floor. "You can't bar me from seeing our father just because you don't want me to. Guardianship doesn't mean you get to make the rules. Legally, it's my right." I bent over, inspecting the contact point between my father and the wood 50 feet below him, only half listening to Milo. A frothy, milk-colored puddle of ooze was starting to develop. I'd witnessed the same phenomenon in the hallway upstairs, but it was much more florid in comparison. That ooze was thicker, with swirls of light pink and a scent like fermenting beer. "Listen, I'm not saying you can't come, I'm saying you shouldn't come." "And why the hell is that?" Instinctively, I pulled a tissue from a nearby end table and dabbed at the slime. The roots spasmed. A few lurched towards me, and a myriad of slim, golden threads exploded perpendicularly from those roots, lashing the back of my hand. Stung like hellfire. A cluster of tiny crimson pinpoints appeared at the base of my thumb, dripping blood. The door to the guest bedroom shook on its hinges. The foyer seemed to get much, much hotter, and it already felt like a greenhouse, despite it being November, despite the AC being off. I yanked the tissue away and mouthed the word "sorry" at the roots. "Hello?" Milo's tone was becoming sharper. I sighed, rolling my shoulders. "Dad doesn't want you here, Milo. What the fuck does that mean? We have no idea what he wants. That part of his brain suffocated a long time ago. Are you trying to tell me he's sick? Would you care if he was?" A pause. That's a real fucked up thing to say, man. There was a palpable melancholy hiding between each syllable. For a moment, I felt remorse, but it was fleeting. You know what I think is fucked up? Campaigning to let your father wither away and die. A campaign that the judge said you lost, in case you forgot, because I have guardianship. For 36 months, I've been doing whatever it takes to keep him healthy. So, yes, Milo, I know what he wants. I'm more attuned to his wants than you'll ever be. And he doesn't want to see the son that tried so damn hard to put him 6 feet under the fucking dirt. He started to say something. We both know that Dad wouldn't want to live like Dash. I hung up. Reluctantly, I called Milo back a few days later and apologized. Not because I actually felt guilty. I just really didn't want the police showing up unannounced for a wellness check. He seemed to accept the explanation that Dad was looking sicker, and I didn't want anything stressing him out. Milo then asked if he could FaceTime with me and him. I told him Dad was taking a nap and that later this week would be better, with no intention of following through. And that was that. Every night before bed, I'd knock on his door. I'd say things like, "Are you ready for me to see you yet? Do you need anything? Water or food or..." And he'd never respond. I didn't let that fact get me down. Mostly. I knew he'd say something back. Eventually. At first, I thought his growth was arbitrary. I figured he was expanding just for expansion's sake, almost like a hobby. But no, the more I watched, the more purposeful it seemed. Once his roots reached the floor, the leaves didn't float out from under the doorframe anymore. Instead, they were carried along the roots themselves by the same string-like appendages that would lash at me occasionally, like a conveyor belt. This allowed them to change direction. Instead of crystallizing straight ahead, further into the foyer, they veered 90 degrees clockwise, carrying leaves to the rightmost corner of his golden tangle and dropping them there. Then, slowly, day by day, they grew towards the cellar. In anticipation, I cleared a path. Propped the door open with a stack of records. That said, I think they would have curled under the frame perfectly fine if I hadn't propped it open. But I was desperate to figure out how I could help. I often wondered about the ooze. For a while, I theorized it was some sort of metabolic waste from Dad's growth. Exhaust from his new, arboreal engine. But if that was the case, why was he so protective of it? It was puzzling. After a while, fungus sprouted from the ooze. Not just one kind, either, all different flavors of mold. Light brown oyster mushrooms. Clusters of yellow-orange shelf fungi. Turkey tail, lion's mane, honey mushrooms. A veritable smorgasbord of wood rot. But that's just it. The surrounding wood wasn't rotting. It looked strong and healthy. When I saw a cockroach stuck in the ooze, tethered to his roots by a few golden fibers, I began to develop a new theory. 4 days, it kept running in place. A masterclass in futility, spinning its jagged legs in place, on and on and on. And yet, it never died. Even after I stepped on it. The cockroach snapped into 3 distinct pieces, each of which continued the original's endless march. What's more, when I returned to it a day later, I didn't find 3 pieces. I found a trio of fully formed, intact, identical-looking cockroaches. The ooze. It was just overgrowth of the wood's natural bacteria. Around his roots, the germs were able to replicate boundlessly. Same with the fungus, same with the insect. Dad had become eternal, and he forced that gift onto everything he touched. Something about watching those cockroaches broke me, though. Their wild, ceaseless motion against an unchangeable fate was agonizingly familiar. For the first time, none of this seemed like a miracle. And, to my unquantifiable horror, I heard someone pounding on the front door. It's Milo. I want to see that Dad's okay with my own 2 eyes. Open the goddamn door or I'm calling the police. I paced around the foyer, hand gripping my forehead, mind racing. Milo's attempts grew more feverish. He began erratically chiming the doorbell between fits of knocking. I could tell the bedlam was stirring Dad. His roots were beginning to tremor. The temperature was rising. The sweetness in the air was becoming oppressively ripe. I just needed him to leave. With a deep breath, I walked forward and opened the door a crack. Milo Dash, I started, talking in a sharp whisper. Please, you need to. Jesus. There you are. You know how many times I've called you, he bellowed. I know, we can talk about this later, some other time. Milo was barely listening. He was angling his head, craning his neck and standing on his tiptoes, trying to get a look inside while I tried to block his view with my body. Suddenly, he leapt back, covering his nose, skull wobbling like he'd just been hit with a sucker punch. Oh my God, what the fuck is that smell? He shouted. Waves of waterlogged heat rolled over my back. I could hear the sound of the guest bedroom door beginning to shake. In a last-ditch effort, I begged. Milo, please go, please just leave. Backpedaling onto my lawn, he put both arms up, palms out, a gesture of surrender. I felt relief sweep through my soul as I lost sight of him in the moonless night. Fine, man, but I'll be coming back with the police. That was all right. It bought me some time. I grabbed the knob and began pulling it closed. There was a rush of movement behind me. A pointed, almost metallic-sounding whoosh, like fishing wire rapidly unwinding. The force of it knocked me aside and threw the door open. My temple collided with the wall. My vision swam, dappled with bright lights and stars. And gold. There was a hideous shriek of pain from outside, accompanied by a meaty thud. In the brief seconds of silence that followed, I struggled to right myself. Once I'd almost gotten on 2 feet, the whooshing began anew. Milo flew in through the door, his capture accented by breathless screams and the sickening snaps of fingernails breaking as Dad dragged him to the stairs. I looked, but only for a moment. His calves were adorned with hundreds of fibers, bright gold barbs progressively reddening as warm plasma leaked from his skewered muscles. That wasn't what caused me to close my eyes, though. It was absolute, mind-shattering terror stitched across his face. His gaping mouth. His bloodshot, bulging eyes. The tendons in his neck jumping from his skin. I gathered myself into a ball, put my head in my hands, and waited for it to be over. There was screaming. Then a prolonged, fleshy squelch. Then nothing at all. I couldn't move. I just laid there, in a ball, shaking, sweating, broken. At some point, my body-wide convulsions calmed, and I slept. The following morning, depleted of adrenaline and drunk on apathy, I trudged up the stairs, unafraid. The roots that curled under his door were painted a dusky crimson, with bits of skin and fragments of bone scattered around the small holes that were empty of vegetation. Somehow, he dragged Milo's entire body through those tiny spaces without damaging the door. I've speculated that it must be reinforced, but I don't know that for sure, because I still haven't seen inside. Now, I can't hear the crinkling, even if I press my ear to the door. Not that he isn't still growing. It's more that the crinkling is inaudible over the sound of Milo talking. Like the fractured cockroach, he's been reborn. And he spent the last week repeating the words he said before he died, on an endless loop, in a random order, with irregular inflections and volumes. Screams and shouts, wails and whispers. On and on and on. It's Milo. I want to see that Dad's okay with my own 2 eyes. Open the goddamn door or I'm calling the police. Jesus. There you are. You know how many times I've called you. I think I'm dying. Probably had been dying before Dad even locked himself in that room. But I ignored the weight loss, and the fatigue, and the progressive yellowing of my now vibrantly jaundiced skin. I'm not worried, though. There's still hope for me. Because something sprouted in my backyard yesterday. A beautiful, bountiful tree, with leaves the color of the sun. Leaves that'll remain radiant through the bitter chill of winter. 12 feet of rich, vascular bark that wasn't there 24 hours ago. I traced the roots down the cellar stairs. The floor is unfinished, just cold, hard earth. Dad implanted himself there. He dug through the soil, blooming in my backyard overnight. I walked outside this evening and stood under the tree. I basked in his warmth. I asked for guidance. I looked up to him and begged for instruction. And, finally, he responded. As tears fell, he told me exactly what to do. I got a ladder from the garage, placed it next to him, and entered the canopy. I couldn't pluck a leaf from one of his branches, but I could peel a copy of it away, crinkling as it separated. It felt tenderly warm and viciously alive in the palm of my hand. Through a second-floor window, two golden eyes peered through the darkness, watching me as I returned inside. As soon as my foot landed on the hardwood, I heard a soft creaking upstairs. The doors finally opened. He's ready to see me. Lie or not, I have to believe it's still a miracle. And as I type this, I have a horrible, heavenly feeling that me, Dad, and even Milo are going to be together for a very long time.
Story 4, The Bone Eater. My father grew up deep in the Appalachian Mountains, the kind of place where the trees swallow the sun by afternoon, and the roads coil like snakes that don't want you to find their end. He worked hard to get out, worked himself bloody, really. Went to college, met my mother, and moved several states away. He never talked much about the place he came from, except to say that it wasn't fit for raising a child. He didn't speak to his parents or his brother for years. Not until after I was born. I think it was one of his old friends, a man named Clyde, maybe, who told my grandparents they had a granddaughter. After that, the letters started coming. Short at first, polite. Handwriting that looked like it crawled out of another century. Then the occasional phone call. Mama said she could barely understand my grandmother's voice. Like the words are trying to claw their way out of her throat, she said once. I didn't meet them until I was 5. That summer, my parents both took time off work to drive to the mountains. Memory's funny. That first trip comes back to me soft and hazy, like half-developed and weathered film. The first half of that trip was fun. We stopped for snacks in weird roadside museums like the world's biggest rocking chair. But then the road started to twist and narrow. The air grew heavier, the trees pressing closer, until it felt like the forest was breathing with us. No billboards, no gas stations, no cell service, just tress and mountains. We finally reached my father's hometown, although calling it a town would have been generous. Really, it was just a few cabins hunched together at the base of a mountain, as if they were hiding. My father told me every family there was kin one way or another. The way he said it made my stomach turn. Even then, the thing that stuck with me most, though, were the bones. Everywhere you looked, bones. Deer skulls nailed above doors, antlers arranged over windows, bones strung together into wind chimes that clattered softly in the wind. Smaller ones, squirrel, raccoon, rabbit, carved into beads, buttons, and figures. Even the baby's rattle had bones in it. There was one boy wearing a necklace of teeth. I reached for it, and my father snapped, not just scolding, but scared. "Don't touch that," he hissed. Later that afternoon, I heard him argue with my grandparents outside. Their voices drifted through the warm air towards me. His voice cracked when he said, "I left so she wouldn't be part of this." I didn't understand what this meant, but I remember the sound of it, the way it carried like a warning. We didn't stay long. Mama said we were supposed to sleep at my grandparents' for a few nights, but right before dinner she bundled me into the car, trembling. We waited there while my father stayed behind. When he came out, his hands were shaking and his eyes were red and bloodshot. He didn't say a word on the drive home. I didn't see them again until I was 10. My father got a call from his brother. Their grandfather, my great-grandfather, had died. My father said he was going home for the funeral. I begged him to take me with him. I think I wanted to understand, to see where I came from. Maybe. Mama looked at him like she already knew it was a mistake. But she didn't stop me. The road looked the same, but heavier this time, like the mountain remembered me. The funeral was held in a clearing behind my grandparents' cabin. There was no church, just a rough wooden box and people whispering. My father and his brothers passed around a cloudy jug. The smell of it burned my nose, sharp and sour, but beneath it I caught something else, something metallic and sweet. After the service, I stayed with my cousins, 3 of them all boy and all older than me. in their cabin while the adults went to drink and grieve. My cousins told stories to pass the time. There was one I remember vividly. They called it the Bone Eater. They said it was a demon, older than the mountains, that fed on the souls of the lost. It could mimic voices, sometimes the cry of a baby, sometimes the sound of your mother calling you home. It wore the hides and bones of what it killed, and wandered the woods on nights when the moon was too bright to be trusted. They said if you ever heard someone call your name from a forest, you were already his. We laughed about it first, but I remember one of my cousins glancing toward me and muttering, "She's got his eyes." I wasn't supposed to hear him. That night, long after my cousins fell asleep, I woke to a sound outside. A voice. It said my name, softly at first, then again, closer. "Come out now, sweetheart." I should have been afraid. My body moved on its own. I crept out of the cabin and stepped barefoot into the cold, damp air. The trees swayed like they were breathing, and the moonlight doused through the thick branches and leaves. I followed the whispers of the trees until I saw a movement, a shape between the thick trunks. Something covered in dark fur. At first I thought it was a bear, but it stood upright. The fur was wet and dark, matted to a body that didn't look right. Too long, too sharp. There was an achingly familiar coppery, sickly sweet, and rotting smell in the air. The figure was illuminated by a stream of moonlight, and I saw what appeared to be a man, his body draped in raw bear hide and slick with blood. Strings of bones and teeth hung from his neck and wrists. His face was smeared red, and his mouth was stained black around two sharp teeth. The blood wasn't his. He turned his head slowly, sniffing the air, and then drifted away into the trees. Something inside me wanted to follow him into the night. There was a trail, a dark, glistening trail that reflected the moonlight, leading back the direction he had come. I followed it down to another cabin. The door was open, the silence surrounding suffocating. I remember stepping over the threshold and seeing red footprints on the floor. Then I saw the bodies. A woman, 3 children, an old man. The woman's throat was gone, her head attached by meager strips of flesh and muscle, and face frozen in wide-eyed terror. The children were torn apart like rag dolls, horribly broken little dolls. The old man's face looked peaceful, but his stomach was ripped open. His organs spilled out into his lap. The thick smell made my eyes water. That's when I felt it. A warm breath on the back of my neck. Slow, wet, steady. I turned around slowly. I came face to face with the dead old man I had just been looking at. Only this version was wrong, unsettling in a way that triggered the instincts bred into humanity since the beginning of time. It was a man in the bear for standing inches from me, his eyes cloudy and gray like dead fish. I could see myself in the reflection of his unblinking gaze. He tilted his head, studying me, and then smiled a slow, wet stretch of lips. He leaned in until his teeth brushed the fragile skin of my throat. I heard a gurgling sound, almost like laughter. Then he pulled back, cupped my cheek with one blood-slicked hand, and whispered. "So pure," he whispered, his voice like wet gravel. "So sweet." He pressed something into my palm, a small leather cord with long, curved jawbone and teeth strung through it. Then he laughed again, hollow and choking, and walked back into the trees. I stood there and watched him disappear into the trees. I could still feel his breath against my throat. When I woke the next morning, I was back in my cousin's cabin. My father was shaking me awake, saying we were leaving. I still had the necklace in my hand. He told me later that one of the families down the road had been taken by an animal, but when I asked about it years later, he wouldn't talk. He'd just say, "You don't go back up there, ever." I still have that necklace. Sometimes, late at night, I put on, when the long and sharp teeth and bone press against my throat. I can almost feel his breath again. And when the wind picks up at night, I swear I can hear his voice in the trees, calling my name. Sometimes, I want to follow it. Would he still think I'm pure? The box of distinctly human ribs and teeth hidden beneath the floorboards would say otherwise. I can't help my appetite. It's in my blood. Story 5, Magnesium Dreams. I've been staring at this screen for 3 hours now, trying to figure out how to start this report. My supervisor wants it done in 48 hours, which is insane considering what I'm dealing with. But here goes nothing. My name is Dr. Varon, and I work in the collections division. Of what organization, you might ask? Don't ask. I have a PhD in neurology, which apparently qualified me for this nightmare assignment. Investigating the connection between magnesium supplements and what we're calling oniric events. Dream stuff. Weird dream stuff. I wish I had more time to organize this properly, but they want speed over structure. So I'm just going to tell you what I found, case by case. Ryan was 34, a chemist. We didn't find out about him until after he died. His wife told us he'd been taking magnesium glycinate for sleep issues related to work stress. Normal things. What wasn't standard were his notes. Part lab journal, part diary. He wrote about dreams of some kind of library in a massive city. He claimed he got a formula there, a skin cream recipe, not from his own research, from the dream. I know how that sounds. But here's the thing. The cream worked. His wife loved it. Her friends loved it. It made their skin look amazing, almost glowing, like they'd gone back in time 10 years. But something was wrong with it. It was gradual. The women who used it started becoming less responsive. They'd stop mid-conversation, stop reacting to things. Their faces stayed beautiful but became blank, expressionless. Their eyes developed this yellowish shine. One neighbor was found sitting at her kitchen table, perfectly healthy by all medical measures, except she wouldn't move or speak or react to anything. Ryan's wife was the first to show symptoms. His later notes are frantic, desperate. He kept trying to fix the formula, to bring back what he called animation. But he kept describing the same thing over and over. Marble smooth skin, warm like stone, silent like statues in a hall. He said he'd seen them in his dreams and tried to recreate them. When we found him, he was sitting next to his wife. She wasn't moving. Her skin was white, smooth, almost translucent. He'd applied the cream to her hands, arms, neck, basically everywhere. She looked more like a sculpture than a person. Ryan was dead too, one hand covering the cream, the other resting on hers. I keep thinking he wasn't trying to make her young. He was trying to make her permanent. Elias was 46, a mechanical inventor, also taking magnesium citrate for insomnia. He built machines for companies but always had side projects going. His wife was traveling for work when things started happening. We have letters between them. I interviewed her after Elias died. Her hands were shaking the whole time. She said he'd written to her about a place called Narrated, a city with a purple sun and stained glass windows with gold running through them like veins. He said the stones were warm to the touch. She thought he was joking at first, but the next letter was worse. He said the warmth from the stones had followed him back, that his hand had actually blistered like he touched something hot. He started sketching the patterns from the windows because they were too precise to forget. I asked if she still had the sketches. She'd burned most of them. They weren't right, she said. I didn't want my son to see them. Let me just include parts of his letters. First letter. You wouldn't believe what I dreamed. I was on this street with dark cobblestones, worn completely smooth. The buildings around me looked almost Gothic, but inverted somehow, like they were hanging from above instead of rising up. I couldn't see the sky, just this false darkness with the sun the color of grapes. It gave off light, but no heat. Doors opened when I walked past them. Stairs moved under my feet, taking me places I didn't choose. I saw carriages rolling through the streets with no one inside. It felt so real that when I woke up, I was convinced I'd actually been there. Second letter. I dreamed of Narrated again. Always Narrated. The doors there are strange. They lead farther than what's physically behind them. They open and close on their own, like the city is guiding me somewhere. Charles is doing fine in school, though I've caught him going through my sketches a few times. It worries me a little. Maybe I'm being paranoid. I love you. Don't worry about him. I'll keep him safe. But these doors, if I could understand how they worked, I think I could build them here. Imagine a door that opens wherever you want it to, not just where it's physically located. Third letter. I think I'm starting to figure it out. The doors, it's in the gold. How it runs through the wood like veins, branching out in patterns. They follow channels. If I could trace the pattern exactly, maybe I could make them work the same way. Charles comes to see me every evening after school. I know I should play with him more, just talk with him. But instead, he watches me work. The neighbor joked about me taking up carpentry, and I laughed until my sides hurt. If only it were that simple. Charles calls it the magic house. He says he loves you and misses you, though I think he's enjoying playing assistant more than he'd admit. Final letter. Recovered foreign police evidence. You must be wondering why I haven't written. Forgive me. Charles is gone. I came back from running an errand and found the workshop door open. I swear I locked it. Inside, everything was disturbed, and the door I'd been building was standing open. It just showed the wall behind it. But I know, it had opened somewhere else. He walked through. There's no other explanation. The police have questioned me. They don't believe what I'm telling them. They think I was negligent or worse. They keep asking why a kid would stay so late in a workshop. I can't explain without telling them what I built. But what did I build? Where's my son? Is he alone there? I've thought about this constantly. If he's in Narrated, I have to follow. I hear him in my dreams, faint and far away. He's calling for me. If I can sleep deep enough, long enough, maybe I can find him. The officers are watching me now, but they can't stop me from sleeping. They'll say I ran away, but I'm not running. I'm going to bring Charles back. Pray for me, though I doubt prayers reach as far as Narrated. Forgive me if I don't come back. I need to take a break. My hand is burning hot as I've been writing too much. I'll finish the rest after I get some sleep. I only have 13 hours left for this report. The light coming through my window is getting dim, kind of purple. I'll need to turn the lamp back on. I woke up, but something's wrong. The window isn't showing evening light anymore. It's this thick, heavy violet glow. I can't see the street. I can't see anything beyond the glass. The window is humming very faintly like it's alive. The doors are my door. The handle is bronze, with gold traced through it in veins and channels. I recognize these patterns. I don't want to touch it, but I can already feel heat coming off it, pressing against my skin. I'm writing this as fast as I can. My hand feels like it's burning, like I've pressed against a fire. There are figures outside the window now. They're not moving, but every time I look up, they're closer. The room smells like lavender. Someone is calling from beyond the door, faint but persistent. I'm going to check outside and see what's happening. I'm telling myself this is some elaborate prank by my colleagues, but I know it's not. Someone is tapping at the door now, very lightly, very patiently. I'll answer it and come back to finish this. Story 6. The drivers here truly are the worst on earth. Wilmington County has the worst drivers in the world. I know everybody says this. I've driven in 15 states, 3 countries, and probably hundreds of small towns. My fiancée got me into it. Every town has a soul. She'd always say, and she was right. You go to all these places, and it feels like there's something in the air, not like they're brainwashed or even necessarily like-minded. It's like a frequency on the radio that everyone is tuned in the back of their heads. You feel some sort of noise when you enter a close community anywhere across the world. Sometimes you and everyone there knows you should leave before things get ugly. People gravitate toward the frequency of their location. I've seen all kinds of places, all unique, and across all of them there are bad drivers. But when I went back to the county where my fiancée grew up, where her parents lived, it became a nightmare I still barely believe. We noticed at the moment we saw the sign. Now entering Wilmington County. A white van driving on the wrong side of the road made me veer right into oncoming traffic and then off the side of the road. I put the car in park on the grass. Jessica, and I stepped out of the car and cursed loudly at the cars that kept on driving. No horns or rolled down windows. You all right, Jess? I'm fine, just in shock. What the hell happened? Who were those assholes? No clue. I replied. They must have been together, right? Some sort of gang. Maybe, yeah. I opened the door, got back in our red Honda Civic, and put my phone back on the holder, reloading the GPS directions to Jess' parents' house. As she got in the car, she looked at me judgmentally for a few seconds before saying, "Should I call the cops?" "I mean, you can do what you want, I guess, but we won't make it for 5 o'clock. Alan, they almost killed us. People could get hurt. They are driving out of the county. I just don't want to waste our time filing a police report that won't go anywhere." The roads were fairly empty on the way into town. There were a few people speeding on the other side, and one guy in a white pickup overtook me. It was when we reached the first four-way stop that everything turned to shit. At first there was nobody there. An empty intersection in a bizarrely empty town. I stopped at the stop sign and pressed on the gas into the open street. Out of nowhere, a Prius smashes into the back passenger side of our car, sending us spinning. "Alan!" I heard Jess screech as we slid into a stop. My heart was racing, and I tried to focus through the shock. When I finally could, I unbuckled myself and got out of the very damaged car. I look out into the distance to see the Prius driving away. Fast as they hit us, I ran to check on Jess, who was making her way out of the car when she collapsed face first onto the pavement. She yelled in agony and slithered on the ground. My ankle," she muttered as I held her. "Call 911. She shouted in my face. I looked off again into the horizon where the Prius had disappeared into. The intersection was still completely empty. Even the tire shop and the ice cream store seemed completely abandoned. 911, what's your emergency?" Some sick bastard hit my car and then ran off. "My fiancée, her ankle is hurt. We need help." "Okay, and could I get your location, sir?" "We're at the intersection of Randall Avenue and Green. We need help. Please send someone fast." "An ambulance will be with you shortly. I've dispatched a nearby officer who should be with you in about a minute. Would you mind staying on the line with me?" "Thank you," I said and hung up the phone. "They're sending an ambulance." I assured Jess, who was moaning in pain. I helped her move to the side of the road and sat with her by the curb, fetched some water from the car, and reassured her again that someone was coming to help. I felt an intense relief when the sound of sirens started getting closer. I didn't know if I should contact Jess' parents or try and figure out if I can still drive the car. I see the Dodge Charger make a violent, screeching around the corner onto Green ST. I stand in front of Jess to wave the officer toward us. The police car was speeding in our direction at 80 miles per hour and wasn't slowing down. It was barreling straight toward us. The sirens were deafening. I heard her cry my name as I rolled out of the way. The grill guard tore her apart, leaving her mangled body unmoving on the pavement. "No!" I said to myself and looked away in horror. The police car stopped suddenly 100 feet down Randall Avenue. There was a streak of Jess blood on the road, leading from its tires. A tall, pale officer blocked the sun as he exited. He gave me a puzzled look, and I backed away, shaking. "What appears to be the problem, sir? You're the one who called, right?" He approached me while his partner got out and glanced over. I kept walking backwards until I was right in front of my red car. "Sir, do not get in that vehicle. We just want to talk. Figure out what happened here." I watched his partner reach for her gun, and I darted into the driver's seat, praying the old Civic would still accelerate. I never turned off the engine, so I slammed my foot on the gas and turned out the way I came. I saw in my one attached side mirror the cops rushing to get back in their car. Soon enough, they were right behind me. The sirens that moment ago brought me relief filled me with existential terror. Another police car joined the chase from an intersection I blasted through. I had to weave through a few cars, drive on the wrong side of the road, the shoulder, but I was getting the hell out of there. I peered through the cracked windshield and saw a stopped truck in the distance. It was blocking off a couple lanes in front of me. I swerved in front of it to see a body in the driver's seat with a crow pecking at it. As I kept driving, I heard a smash and an explosion. A cop car had driven straight into the truck and brought a few units down with it. They were still chasing me, though. I looked out the window to see a motorcycle pulling up beside me. It wasn't the police. It was like a guy in a full biker outfit with tattoos and sunglasses. He looked in my direction and shoved his bike right into me, sending himself violently over my windshield and onto the road behind me. What the F-U-C-K? I shouted as I tried to speed up, but I could feel the car falling apart. No. No, 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 no. The piece of junk began slowing down as two police cars, one completely busted itself, gained on me. I saw smoke coming from my engine and in a panic, jumped from a moving car. I rolled, collecting scrapes and bruises, but quickly got up and ran off the side of the road into the wooded area. When I made the mistake of looking back, I watched a cop car hit the curb of the street and fly up toward me. It ended up upside down, wrapped around a skinny tree, and I kept running. The other cop car, the one that was already beaten up, managed to get up over the curb and was driving me down in the scarce woods. I ran faster than I ever thought I could, my tears and sweat morphing together. I was getting tired, and I knew I couldn't outrun a crazed cop car. I braced and made myself as small as possible in the grass. The police car, the first one that still had my fiancée's blood splattered over the front, bumped on a hill and in an act of God, flew an inch over my face and right ahead of me. It kept driving straight into a tree. I shuddered and walked away as one of the cops got out of the completely total Charger. "Hey!" She yelled at me as I kept walking off, not looking back this time. "What's going on here? Who the hell are you?" "Dispatch. I've been in an accident. Officer Denman isn't responding." "Hey, stop." She continued shouting in my direction. I tried to wipe some mud off my face and ended up smearing it across my cheek. I walked right out past a sign that read, "Now leaving Wilmington County." I'm never going back there. I'm never driving again. I don't know what happened to her family. I don't care. I'm just glad it's behind me. Story 7. They told me the town flooded years ago, but I just walked through it. I hadn't been back to my hometown in over 30 years. After my mother died, there wasn't much reason to. She'd been a lasting tying me there. But when I saw the headline, 30 years since the Greenvale flood, something twisted inside me. I don't know why I did it, but that same weekend, I got in my car and drove back. The highway was longer than I remembered, and for the last 20 miles, there were no other cars, just empty stretches of road, lined with trees that felt too still. When I finally reached the turnoff, the old "Welcome to Greenvale" sign was still standing, leaning to one side. Someone had spray painted over it. "Closed area. Keep out." But the road beyond looked fine. Not washed out, not collapsed, just forgotten. I expected ruins. What I found was home. The houses stood exactly where I remembered them. Same cracked sidewalks, same lampposts. The gas station on the corner still had the faded sign for 79 cents coffee. But what made me stop was the people. There were people. An old man mowing his lawn. A woman hanging clothes to dry. A kid riding a bike past me. The same model I had when I was 10. I slowed down, rolled my window down. "Hey!" I called out to the man mowing. "Is this Greenvale?" He cut the mower's engine and looked at me like I'd asked if water was wet. "Of course it is." Then he smiled politely and went back to mowing. I parked near my old street. The pavement was cracked but familiar. I half expected to see the treehouse my brother and I built behind our yard. And when I walked down the block, I did. Same wood, same rope ladder. Even the initials carved in the trunk. D+M 1989. I reached out and touched them. The wood was dry, but the letters felt freshly cut. A chill ran through me. My old house looked untouched. Paint a little faded. Curtains still hanging in the same place. Someone was inside. Through the window, I saw a movement. A woman walking to the kitchen. For a second, I thought maybe someone new had moved in. Then she turned her head slightly and I froze. It was my mother. Not older, not changed. Exactly as I remembered her in 1994. I stepped back, heart pounding. The screen door creaked open, and she stepped out, wiping her hands on a towel. "Danny," she said softly, "what are you doing out here?" Her voice, I swear to God, was real. I couldn't speak. She frowned a little. "You look pale. Come inside, dear." I followed her in. The smell hit me instantly. Coffee and lavender detergent. Everything was in its place. The same furniture, the same tablecloth, even the same photo of Dad on the mantel. I started. She turned to me, smiling faintly. "You thought what?" I couldn't finish the sentence. She smiled again, poured me a cup of coffee, and said, "You should rest. You've been gone a long time." I sat down, shaking. Everything felt real, too real. After a while, I went outside to get some air. The street was quiet, the air heavy with that thick pre-storm humidity. Down the road, I saw someone standing by the old town square, a man about my age, wearing a tan jacket. He waved me over. When I got closer, I realized he looked familiar. I couldn't place him until he spoke. "You shouldn't be here," he said. "What do you mean?" His eyes darted to the houses around us. "It's not what it looks like. They don't move on here. They just stay the way they were." I swallowed hard. "Who are you?" He hesitated, then said, "You were in my class. Fielding. Marcus Fielding." The name hit me like ice. Marcus had lived 2 streets over. He drowned in the flood trying to save his sister. But there he was, standing in front of me. I must have gone pale, because he said, "You really don't remember, do you?" "Remember what?" He pointed toward the riverbed. None of this should exist. The water took everything. I followed his gaze. From here, I could still see the church steeple, the houses, the quiet streets. Everything was still and perfect, like a photograph frozen in time. Marcus sighed. "You didn't make it out either, Dan." I laughed. A shaky, hollow sound. "I'm right here." He shook his head. "So am I." When I looked back toward the houses, the lights were on in every window, glowing warm yellow, steady. But no one was moving inside. The shapes behind the curtains were still. "Don't let them talk to you again," Marcus said quietly. "Once you believe it, you stay." And then he was gone. Not vanished, just gone, like he'd never been there. I ran back to the house. The front door was open. The TV was playing softly, a weather broadcast from decades ago. Residents are advised to evacuate immediately as water levels rise. The image flickered. My mother was sitting in her chair, staring at the static screen. "Mom," I said, voice shaking. She turned to me, her eyes blank, unfocused. "Dinner's almost ready," she said. "Your brother's still outside." Her voice trembled like an old recording. I stumbled out into the yard. The air felt thicker now, and the smell, not lavender anymore, but mold and river silt. Down the street, water shimmered at the intersection. At first, I thought it was rainwater. Then I realized it was spreading, slow, steady, reflecting the yellow lights. I ran to my car, started the engine, and turned toward the main road. But the sign was gone. The road curved endlessly through fog. The radio crackled. Then came a voice. Mine. "You shouldn't be here." I don't remember how I got out. I woke up the next morning on the side of the highway, 30 miles from Greenvale. My car was parked on the shoulder, keys still in the ignition. I tried to drive back, but the turnoff wasn't there. The trees were thicker, the road freshly paved. I asked a gas station attendant about Greenvale. He frowned. "That's the place that flooded, right? Back in '94, whole town went under. They built a reservoir over it." He pointed toward the valley. "You can still see the church steeple when the water's low." I drove there. He was right. The steeple was there, rusted, barely visible through the surface. And near the edge of the memorial plaque, half buried in moss, I found it. My name, Daniel. I touched it. The metal was cold. And for a moment, just a moment, I swore I could hear someone calling me home. Story 8. I explored the catacombs in Paris. What I discovered: when I was 15, my friends and I went on a school trip to Paris. We got a chance to explore the catacombs. I wish I hadn't gone. As I said, we were 15 at the time, and we got this rare chance to go to Paris for a school trip. We would be studying the history of Paris and its catacombs as well. My friends and I were really excited because we love scary, ancient stuff like that. Our whole class seemed to feel the same, as there was a lot of discussion and rumors regarding those catacombs. One of these rumors was that some ancient creature or entity was lurking in the catacombs. For the rest of the morning, I couldn't shake those rumors out of my mind. People were saying things like, "I've heard that the last group went and only 2 returned," and "I heard there's more than bones inside." I was a bit terrified, to be honest, but I laughed at the things people said like everybody else. When we finally arrived at the entrance to the catacombs, the air felt heavy and people didn't laugh as much. Everyone seemed serious, and I could feel the anxious atmosphere. "Okay, everyone, get in line and don't start wandering around. Just follow the line through," our teacher said. We formed that line and went in. When I first stepped through that rusty metal door, the air felt colder and heavier than outside. Instantly, I felt off. My anxiety started to rise. "Hey, do you feel this weirdness?" My friend Tommy whispered to me. "Yeah, dude, really weird place. Maybe the rumors are true after all." I answered, "No way, bro. It's just our minds playing tricks on us," Tommy assured me. I looked around and I saw skulls and bones just piled up everywhere, torches flickering and giving light. The smell in that place was really musty and old. But what can you expect from a place where there are millions of rotting bones? "Wow! Imagine how many people are dead in here," Tommy whispered. "Yeah, thousands of people and probably all ages too," I answered. I was fascinated by this place. Something about these bones and the mystery about this place got me interested. I looked left and I saw a corridor there. For a moment, I thought that I wanted to explore that corridor on my own. Then I saw something move there. It made a bone-crushing sound. "What was that?" I asked Tommy and pointed at the corridor. "I don't fucking know, and I really don't want to either," he answered. His voice was a bit shaky, but he hid it well. At that point, I was pretty anxious, scared, and just want to get out of there already. What was exciting at first changed to fear in seconds. I didn't know if anyone else had heard this sound or seen something extraordinary. We kept going, and the tour we had was supposed to last for 2 hours. At that point, 15 minutes had passed. Suddenly, I heard a girl scream from the back of the line. I looked back and didn't see anything. It was pitch black when I looked. All I could see was Tommy and the guy behind him. What the fuck was that? I asked Tommy. Some girl screamed, "She's probably just a chicken," Tommy said. The guy in front of me was called Philip. Philip opened his mouth and told us, "This place is fucked. We need to get out of here." Then he told us that he read from the internet that there lurked some weird monster. Nobody had seen the monster clearly, but apparently it was made of bones, had sharp nails, and was devil-like. Philip also told us that he saw a skull that kept following him. He said that the skull had this weird symbol on its forehead. He also said that he heard the bones cracking and some distant whispering. I got goosebumps, and right then I heard the bones cracking again on my right. I swear I saw something moving in there, but it was so dark that I couldn't see what. At this point, 30 minutes of the tour had passed. We stopped at a spot where there was a cross made in the wall. The tour told us about how priests came here to pray and how some priests offered sacrifices. He told us that some of the sacrifices included dead animals, human body parts, or jewelry and gold. He also told us a story about a priest who went in there to make a sacrifice in a last attempt to save his dying wife. The sacrifice failed because the man didn't sacrifice enough. The guide ended the story with, "The priest tried to save his wife with sacrifice, but ended up staying in the catacombs forever." Thud. A loud stomp was heard from behind us. The guide started laughing hysterically. Then I heard that bone-crushing sound again, and it was coming towards us. Then the guide said, "Every now and then a tourist or a tour guide goes missing in here. Never thought it would be me." Our teacher started to yell at the tour guide. "We have to go now. Let's get the hell out. It's useless to escape. The priest knows the catacombs better than me or you and can move much faster than us." This happened to my cousin as well, but he managed to escape by believing in God to save him. The guide told us calmly. The tour guide's calm behavior was really weird, but at the same time, it kind of calmed me down too. Then another thud and some bones falling from the walls. Should we move and try to get the fuck out? I yelled at the guide. I didn't see a point in just accepting that. Now we're gonna die. I was only 15 and wanted to experience more in life. Yeah, let's go. The guide stuttered and started to lead us out of there. We formed that line again, but now we grouped together. I was with Tommy, Philip, and Jasmine. Are you scared? Jasmine asked. Fuck no. There ain't nothing in here. Tommy answered. Don't try to look tough, Tommy. It's okay to be scared. I said. Yeah, I think we all are a little scared, Philip added. Another loud thud. Some girls screamed in front of the line. Soon we reached a spot where there was no light, a narrow passage, and on the other side, there was pure darkness. Then the others came through as well. Where the hell is Tommy? I asked Jasmine and Philip. I thought that he was just behind us, but apparently not. Philip said and scratched his head. Then Tommy came through as well, but soon after, he collapsed to the ground and started coughing. Ugh, get out! Get out now! Tommy screamed. He was coughing up blood, and he was croaking. The bones crashed, and the passage we just went through collapsed. This tour felt like it lasted forever. A never-ending nightmare underground. Okay, guys, let's get Tommy up and then get ourselves as far away from here as possible, Philip said. We helped Tommy up and then started walking. We heard the sound of crushing bones inside the walls, and it sounded like it followed us. Then we heard bones crushing right beside us. Thud. There were bones flying everywhere. Jasmine and Tommy started screaming. Something had broken through a wall. Me and Philip looked at each other and nodded. Both of us understood that now was the time to run. Guys, we need to run now. I yelled at the group before we could start running. I looked at the wall and something bigger than any of us came through. It was crushing bones on the way, its head twitching. I saw only a glimpse in the dark cave. We need to fucking run. I screamed, grabbed Jasmine, and started sprinting. I didn't see if Tommy and Philip followed us. It was life or death. I heard them running behind me. Tommy, Philip, follow us. I screamed in hopes of them following my voice. Then I heard the monster running behind us. I kept begging for God to let us survive and get out. Then Jasmine slipped and fell. Ouch, she yelled. I went over to help her. Get up, get up. We must continue and we'll survive. I assured her. She looked really scared, and honestly I was too. We continued. Took a left and then dived under a table in that room. S-H-H-H, I said to Jasmine. We hid under there for some time. Then I got up, looked around, and told Jasmine that we were clear. She got up too, and we started to find our way out. Everyone from our class was gone. I didn't know where Tommy and Philip were. It was just us and that thing. We walked around, not a word to each other. We just kept quiet in case that thing was lurking around somewhere. We arrived at this corridor that had stairs going up. Look, a way out. I whispered to Jasmine and pointed at those stairs. Finally, fuck this place. Jasmine yelled. A big fucking mistake. She thought we were off the hook. Suddenly we heard the bones crushing behind us. The monster was approaching again. Why the fuck did you do that? I asked Jasmine. I don't know, she replied and went full hysterical. She started crying. I grabbed her hand and said, we need to go, unless you want to die. We started running up the stairs. I looked back and the monster almost caught us. Jasmine fell again on the stairs, but I had to continue. For both our sake. The door at top of the stairs was rusty, heavy, and it took a while to get open. Finally the door opened. I got out and looked behind. Jasmine was reaching for my hand. I grabbed it and started pulling her in. Then the monster grabbed her leg. It got me. She screamed and started wiggling to get herself free. Then my grip loosened and her hand slipped away. Right then, the monster started dragging her back in catacombs, and that monster mumbled something like, "Le sacrifice n'est pas terminé." Asterisk. The sacrifice is not finished. Jasmine, fight back, I'll save you. I yelled at her and tried to get back and to save her, but the door slammed shut right on my face. I heard a soft whisper coming through that door. Toi tu finiras. You will finish it. Next thing I know, I wake up in the hospital. A doctor is checking my condition. I looked to my left, and my teacher was there. She looked like she had been through much worse. She was all bloody and covered in mud. "I'm glad you're alive," she said to me. "Me too. What the hell happened?" I asked her. "You don't want to know. Believe me," she told me. Then I passed out. I still haven't found out what happened to the rest of our class. I just hope I never have to go back down there to find out. Story 9. My GPS rerouted me somewhere that doesn't exist. To whoever finds this, my name is Mateo, and I'm currently somewhere that doesn't exist. I have tried every GPS app out there, checked out maps, even went online, see if anyone else has experienced what I'm currently going through. But it seems like I still can't find a way out of this place. It all just started as a normal drive. I was on my way back from work when my GPS gave me a notification. A faster route is available. Would you like to take it? Not thinking much of it, I tapped yes and kept my music going, Grateful Dead for the Curious. Sure, it was a little weird to see a new shortcut on a commute I've driven for years, but I figured maybe they'd opened a new road or done some construction. As I kept driving, things started making less sense. It's a hard feeling to describe, but it was almost as if someone who did not know anything about road signs just went crazy alongside the road with them. Limit speed, MPH 65. In exit 2,526 miles. Northeast-southwest. I was obviously thinking these were fake. Maybe some prank pulled by local teenagers or something. As I drove past them, I remember just how real they looked though. The same kind of metal stakes and sign material a real sign is made of. That wasn't all though. The trees and the plants don't make much sense here either, and it hurts to look at them too long. I just try to keep my eyes on the road. Driving for this long has surprisingly not taken a lot of gas from my car, although it has gone down a bit since I first got on it. My odometer currently spins all the numbers non-stop, but otherwise my car seems fine, even driving to the soft parts of the road with little trouble. The road gets soft sometimes, among other things. But in the time I've spent here, I have learned to not ask how this place works and just try to focus on getting the hell out of here. It doesn't really feel like I'm in any danger, but I know that this isn't right either, almost like I'm doing a bad thing just by existing in this place. I've changed too. I haven't felt hunger and thirst even though I'm sure I've been here for days now. I blink less, sometimes going minutes in between until I realize I haven't blinked and I force myself to. I think this is day 4, and while driving I came across a gas station, or at least the idea of one. This place looks like a regular gas station, sure, but it's just the surface of it. It feels like plastic to touch, with a slight discoloration to it. I tried to open the door, but it wasn't a door. Not really. Coming closer to the door, I realized it was actually a wall, not something with a tangible handle I could grab. I tried looking into the windows too, but I was not able to see through the glass, although I could see my reflection in the mirror. It is a strange feeling to watch your reflection start copying you, but then stop halfway, stuck in whatever position happened to freeze on. I'm not going to dwell on that right now. Whatever the hell this place is though, it's the closest thing I currently have to a feeling of normalcy here. I think I'm writing this just to stay sane. If someone finds this phone, at least they'll know what happened. My phone keeps syncing the wrong time now too. I'll blink and it jumps forward hours. And I stop trying to understand it. The sky doesn't move though. It's that same dull gray blue it has been since I took that turn onto this road. As I sat there in my car, contemplating whether to start driving at that moment or rest a little longer, I saw it. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a hand. There were dozens of them pressed against the inside of the gas station, stretching against the walls which unmistakably began to crack under the internal pressure. Wasting no time, I stomped on the gas pedal and heard my engine roar to light. However, I also heard the bursting of the wall behind me. Looking in my rear view mirror, I panicked as I saw the wave of hands flooding toward my car, clawing over one another in such a chaotic frenzy it hurt to look at. In the rear view mirror, the hands weren't slowing. They were multiplying, dragging themselves across the asphalt like a tide. I drove until my arms ached, until the sky blurred into the same color as the road. The hands never caught me, but I don't think they stopped either. If I stay still too long, I can see a mass start to form in the reflection of my car mirrors. Just when I thought all hope was lost, the GPS just spoke again. A faster route is available. Would you like to take it? Story 10. Someone sent me a story about my dead father called Oimikon's Hungry Men. When I was about 5 or 6, my dad disappeared. My mom always said he died, but never gave any good explanation into how. She told me he was on a research trip somewhere in Russia. I don't remember much about him, just that he had a contagious laugh and a hug that could fix absolutely everything. Today, almost 15 years later, I received a journal in my mailbox. Mom put it in there, told me someone had dropped it off at the old house, and it was for me. She didn't say from who, because she didn't know. Just said it was on the front porch with my name on it. Now, what I read was a demented story about my father, none of which I think is true. Maybe it's some prank from one of the kids next door. I don't know. I'd let Mom look at it. But I don't want her reading this. I can't fit it all in here, so I'll have to add the rest later. Any thoughts on what this could be about would be really helpful. Thanks. The brutal chill of the night reminded me of my naivety. Days turned into weeks, and all that I had left was a scant pile of food. I'd blown through a month's worth of rations with ease. I stared down at my shaking hands, maimed from the wilderness. My skin split from the frozen mountain air and left Saharan-like cracks across my knuckles. Scabs formed over the tiny cuts and reopened every time I made a fist. I held them in front of the wood stove, hoping to alleviate my aches. The fire cracked furiously, emitting a nauseating heat that made the room practically intolerable. Outside the cabin walls, a violent blizzard transpired. The windows rattled with anger, and air made its way through the cracks of the cabin. The dropping temperature was far more concerning than the snow. If I were to step outside, my blood would freeze in a matter of minutes. I couldn't leave, even if I wanted to. Sitting in the corner was an elderly man who spoke few words, most of which were hateful. "You must eat." Victor, the man in his late 80s, stated. His voice was thick and coated in mucus. I kept my gaze low, focused on the wood stove in front of me. No, yes, I'm not interested. He scoffed at my defiance. It will only get worse from here. He grumbled in annoyance. His accent was heavy and difficult to understand. I scooted closer to the fire, my feet nearly pressed against the iron stove. Victor rhythmically knocked his cane against the floor. The humdrum of the tapping was soothing in comparison to the screechy creaks of the cabin. My hand trailed to my right leg as I leaned forward. I felt heat emitting from my jeans as I held a hand over the aching limb. "Connor." I turned my head toward the old man. A sigh left his brittle lips. His tongue wetted the dry skin on his mouth before he spoke. I stared at his face, wrinkled like a crumbled piece of paper. "You must eat. If not now, soon." "I can't." His cane tapped the floorboard in annoyance. He scrunched his mouth up to his nose and shook his head. His white hair puffed around him and cascaded down the front of his shirt. "Die. I don't care." My grip on my leg tightened, and I dropped my gaze. I felt my face get hot as I boiled with anger. I let out a deep breath and closed my eyes. The heat from the fire fueled my overwhelmed nature. "I'll eat tomorrow," I whispered, trying to hide my animosity. "Tomorrow it is." I could hear a sly smile in his voice. He was pleased with himself, like he'd won some shitty prize. The old man rose with a groan. His joints cracked loud enough for me to wince. The ground squeaked under his wobbly gait as he walked toward me. "Remember? Shut the curtains." I didn't respond to his reminder, too distracted by the fire dancing in front of me. His cane knocked against my back with a loud crack. "Shit," I muttered, rubbing the sore spot on my spine. "I will." "Watch your mouth." The man hissed. He slowly turned around and hobbled away. "Do you need help? Don't act like you care." His voice was laced with venom. He left the living room and slammed the door behind him. Victor ran off to do God knows what in his bedroom. He left me my devices, planted right in front of the roaring stove. There was no denying that Victor was tired of the ungrateful little shite I had been. In my solitude, my mind wandered. How much longer till I could leave? He hadn't told me anything remotely relevant to my research. There was no real reason for me to stay any longer. I nudged the fire with a poker and embers spat at me. Playing into the old man's delusions was starting to wear me thin. He was particular, had many rules, and made sure I followed them to a T. Over time, I realized nothing was worth having to endure life inside a primordial cabin. My stomach grumbled in anger, and I winced. I dropped the fire poker and held my hand over my aching belly. Victor was right. I had to eat eventually. I fantasized about the pot of stew he left on the counter. The smell tickled my nose and left a pit in the bottom of my stomach. From what Victor was telling me, that pot of food was a flesh-eater's wet dream. Something had to give. I couldn't rely on my meager rations for much longer. I rose to my feet and let out a labored breath. The pot of food sat on the counter and stared at me. One bite would be enough to eradicate years of discipline. My hands were pinned to my side as I took short steps toward the bait. Steam rose off the substance, swirling into the air. Inside was an amalgamation of various meats, submerged in a thick, dark gravy. Blood sausages and indistinguishable cubes of meat poked out of the sauce. Excessive amounts of saliva built up in my mouth. I sucked up the spit before my drool mixed with the so-called stew. There was no stopping me. Like mad, I dug my grimy hands inside the pot and felt a sausage squelch between my fingers. My teeth popped the casing, and the mince crumbled into my mouth. A quiet moan escaped my lips as I lowered my head. God, that was the first time I had meat in years. It danced over my tongue, and when I swallowed, I felt the warmth travel through my throat into my belly. I was surprised I didn't empty the contents of my stomach right on that shitty hardwood floor. It was greasy and had a pungent odor. I was revolted. I was addicted. My fingers dug back into the pot and reached for a cube of meat. I felt the tender flesh melt into my mouth, and another grumble of a moan escaped my lips. I licked the gravy off my fingers and closed my eyes. My chest heaved up and down as I rested my hands on the countertop. The contents of my belly stirred in excitement. A burp left my mouth as I backed away. No more. I took a moment to collect myself. What had I done? Sure, I only stopped eating meat because Kate was a die-hard vegan, but still, that was my way of life for so long, and I just caved so easily. I knelt and opened the cabinet. I grabbed a lid, covered the pot, and pushed it so it was flush with the wall. The smell was far more manageable than before. Guilt hung around in my belly and festered like fungus. I combed my hand through my hair and felt remnants of gravy hang on the strands. Jesus fuck. I whispered to myself. The floor creaked with each step I took. I knew the old man heard me mucking about. He knew what I'd done and how weak I was. He knew that I didn't have control, that I let on. He was right. I think he was always right about me. I stopped in front of the only window in that cabin. A thick, icy layer of snow decorated Victor's front porch. Past that, I could see nothing. Darkness sucked up all that was outside, shrouding everything in a thick veil. Furious wind rattled the cabin and found its way inside. If one stood close enough to the wall, they would feel its icy touch. No light from the moon graced the tundra. God had forgotten us. My fingertips pressed against a glass pane, and I longed to talk to the people of Oymyakon. I needed to know more about the subarctic land. Victor was a poor conversationalist who gave me no beneficial information. All I had were the anecdotes of a hermit. My research was no longer of importance, and no matter how much I needed to learn more, it was fruitless. The cold from outdoors trailed down my arm. The blood in my veins boiled no more. My turning stomach eased as I let out a heavy sigh of relief. I could have sat there with a hand pressed against that glass all evening. Eventually, I pulled away, knowing that Victor would blow a gasket if he saw me. I made my way to the couch and sat down. The cushion felt like a brick under my sore ass. I rested my head on the shitty pillow Victor gave me and let out a sigh. My eyes closed, and I begged for sleep to take me. Behind my eyelids, dancing colors decorated a black backdrop. I would entertain myself with a fireworks show of phosphines. In due time, I would drown in an ocean of melatonin. But until then, my mind would wander. What day was it? I knew weeks had passed, but my mind was far too jumbled to make sense of dates. Christmas was coming up. Sweet little Rosie and her fiery ringlets. She would run from downstairs and jump right into my arms. I'd take her outside and show her the bike gate, and I bought her. We'd have the Christmas dinner that we all cooked together. My mother and father would gawk at Kate's excessive decor and bitch about something. It would have been nice to see them together again. I brought a hand up to my cheeks. They were wet with emotion. The tears wiped away with ease, and I squeezed my eyes shut. A shaky breath escaped my lungs. I needed to calm down. There was no sense in making myself miserable. The windows rattled angrily, nearly broken by the force of the wind. The front door shook, threatening to come right off the hinges. Cold air burst through the cabin and rushed over my exposed skin. My body went rigid as a burst of adrenaline coursed through my veins. Stiff as a board and quiet as a mouse. I could not move. I could not breathe. The floorboards creaked with each passing moment. My tear-stained cheeks froze in the chill of the night as I lay still. Something was inching toward me. I felt it caress my aching body. Dizziness ensued as I struggled with inconsistent, labored breaths. My eyes shot open. They were wide with surprise as I glanced around the dark room. To my shock, nothing waited for me. The musty room was still filthy and still empty. I flopped onto my back and stared at the ceiling. How much longer until I officially lose it? The walls were coming on me if I stayed in them any longer. My soul had been crushed by the torment of being stuck in a cage for weeks on end. With a heavy heart, I closed my eyes and tried to ignore the unrelenting urges that taunted me. Rest was a natural cure for all ailments. The Sandman would best my hunger, my pain, my fear, and most importantly, my desires. He came for me not too long after, and I was lulled into a deep sleep. Are you stupid? Something whacked across my shin. I winced and pulled away. The old man gave me a pleasant wake-up call. What? Stupid and deaf. The old man scoffed. He drew the curtains closed and turned to me. Keep the curtains drawn at night. He nudged me with the cane again. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Quit doing it. I will. A deep frown sat on my face. He shook his head at me and sighed. Lousy. The old man walked toward the counter as he leaned on his cane. His rag-like clothing wafted the smell of must across my nose. I grimaced and lowered my head. Victor let out a grumble and jabbed his cane into the floor. I see. I'm sorry. I looked at him with furrowed brows. Hunger bested you. Humiliated, I averted my eyes from him. It was clear that I had no will. There's no shame in eating. You had to eventually. Victor grumbled. He stepped away from the counter and cleared his throat. Connor. He gave me an indistinguishable look. His beard was long and hadn't seen a pair of scissors in ages. He leaned to the side with a slight preference for his left leg as he walked. He lowered himself into the wooden chair across from me with a groan and licked his lips. I am here to help you. He stopped for a moment to settle into his chair before continuing. You came to me, no? His furry white brows raised with his question. I suppose I did. Then why don't you trust what I say? You won't tell me anything. His patience was wearing thin, as was my sanity. Any longer with this violent old man, and I'd lose my mind. He scoffed and looked toward the wood stove. The color orange danced across his pale skin. It made the wrinkles on his face deepen and add another 10 years to him. In due time, he muttered. My face scrunched up like I just ate a sour candy. I found it hard to stifle my feelings of aggravation. How did you sleep? Victor asked. When I sat up, my nerves jolted alive and the aches ensued. My legs throbbed and searing blood pumped to my feet. Fine. My voice petered out. He scoffed and flared his nostrils. He said something in Yakut under his breath. I wanted to ask what, but I knew I'd get a lashing for the nosiness. I wasn't sure why he asked. It's not like he really gave a shit. His eyes drifted to the closed window. and he nearly rolled his eyes. Victor hobbled to the curtains and snatched a piece of the cloth into his hands. He sniffed the curtain and flicked it away. "I know why," Victor announced. I furrowed my brows and watched as he turned toward the tiny kitchen. He tottered over to the cupboards and bent down with a grunt. In his hands was a small container of salt. He hurried to the window, laid out a thick line of salt, and did the same to the front door. "Why, Dash, come look." He set the container down on the end table and held the cloth out for me to look at. "This is why we keep the curtains closed at night. See?" He pointed. I got up with a groan and shuffled toward the old man. His stench forced me to breathe through my mouth. "I don't." He grunted and pointed again. I squinted my eyes. The ends of the curtains were covered in filth. The once white doily drapes were tainted with streaks of grime. I didn't say anything. That's just the product of time. If we inspected them the day before, they'd look the same. "These curtains are for my wife. Careless bastard." He tossed them to the side and shook his head. I licked my dry lips and dropped my gaze to the floor. "Are you sure they weren't always like that?" You would have thought I shot the old fart. He looked at me wildly before shaking his head. "Yes, positive." He grumbled. "Then, shouldn't we be worried about what did that?" Victor shrugged and waddled over to his chair, though it groaned underneath his weight, and he glared at me. "It is but a symptom of the cause." "What is?" "Would this old fuck tell me something? Anything?" "I cannot tell you." I shook my head and sat back down on the couch. "Why?" "I cannot say its name. Quit with the questions." "I'm confused." His cane crashed into the wooden floor, and he roared in annoyance. Do not be surprised when you run away from the world, and the evils of it find sanctuary where you find solitude. I opened my mouth to speak, but he held up a finger. "It knows you are here and it wants you." His finger dropped, and he cleared his throat. "It will keep coming, no matter what." "Forever?" I asked. "I don't know." "I thought you knew everything." He grumbled at my question, refusing to respond. My socks made a muffled thud every time I tapped the floor with my foot. The rhythm soothed my rising feelings of frustration. "So, is this thing a part of some folktale of sorts?" The old man paid no attention to my question and picked at the handle of his cane with a pocket knife. "I don't know, is it?" he asked me instead. My teeth ground together in annoyance. "I'm asking you, is it supposed to be a leshy?" He nearly laughed at my suggestion. "There is no name for this thing, not one that anyone from this century would know. It is something the townspeople and I have come to accept, to adapt with." If the old man was right, then I apparently didn't deserve a warning. Our eyes met, and he gave me a hard look of sincerity. That's when it hit me. That's when it slapped me right in the side of the face and rolled my eyes all around my skull. This man was dead serious. "It's a folktale, right? Not real." I shook my head as I stood. All of it is real. If you aren't careful, you will find out how real." He nearly snarled at me. I wanted a story for my thesis, not be fucking trapped with some delusional old man. My heart raced as I backed toward the door. "Do not." He struggled to stand up. Victor pointed his mangled finger at me and spit flew out his mouth. "Just let me leave. I've got all the information I need." My voice trembled as I inched closer to the door. "No, no. You heard me." "No." His face was stern, and a scowl rested atop folds of wrinkles. "You can't keep me here." I barked. My back grazed the door, and he gave me a look that screamed for me to stop. "You are foolish. You are reckless." The old man screamed. His saliva painted my cheeks as he slammed his cane down, barely missing me. A loud thud bounced off the walls. He wobbled from side to side and tried to raise the cane. I scrambled for the door handle, and he stopped himself. Regret painted over his face, and he took a step back. It took him a moment to collect himself, but he eventually spoke between heavy breaths. "You will die out there," he reasoned, with his hand outstretched. "And I won't in here? It is below 50 out. You will freeze in minutes. I'll get my gear and leave. I promise I can be out of here in seconds." The old man shook his head at my suggestion. My heart dropped into my stomach as I pressed my back closer to the door. Your gear, it cannot stand to what is outside. He reasoned. I think I've overstayed my welcome. He had to let me go. A storm is coming. How do you know? I have lived here my whole life. That is how I know. Your bones ache. Your joints feel like they will crush under pressure. It is not safe for you to go. He leaned on the cane and grimaced. Our rapport was coming to an end. His mind had been made up. Please, you can go tomorrow, yes? Victor suggested. I trailed off and looked aside. My hand was wrapped around the handle of the door. Tomorrow I can answer any questions you have. Yes. He nodded slowly and gestured for me to come away from the door. I opened my mouth to speak, but didn't. You're writing something. He swallowed as his eyes darted from me to the door. I can help. I felt like I had gotten whiplash from his sudden soft nature. I will not hurt you. That is a promise. He held up a hand and backed away from me. I'm an old man, remember, he stated. I nodded, and so, did he? I just need you to listen to me. Okay? Hear me out, maybe? He suggested, and I nodded again. He walked over to his chair and sat down, evidently exhausted from standing. I stayed close to the door, and he simply watched me. Did you see something out there? He asked. I thought to myself for a moment. Something lunged at me tonight. I made it to the cabin. Nothing but a wolf or something. An animal. Maybe. It was a couple of weeks ago. I didn't get a good look at it. I reasoned. I've seen your leg. He looked up at me. If I wasn't mistaken, he looked almost remorseful. What did he mean he saw my leg? It looks angry. Needs cleaned. I haven't taken my pants off since I've got here, except to shit and piss. What are you, Dash? He lifted his own pant leg. Staring at me was a mangled ankle, covered in scar tissue. 2 long divots were embedded in his flesh as veins escaped from the old wound. Around it were cut marks, as if he had sawn away his own flesh. It's only a scratch. I reasoned. Did that animal scratch you? Yeah, I mean barely. Then that's enough. My lips parted and my brows furrowed. You seem fine. He nodded at my observation. Yes, I fought the urge. What urge? The urge to go outside. He was being sincere. He believed every single thing he told me. I folded my arms in front of my chest and slowly inched toward the couch. It still stalks this land. We are in its territory. You must know we are the outsiders. We are in its home. The look in his eye was crazed and distant. He shook with each word he spoke, spit dribbling down his mouth. We can go back to town together, I suggested. I know what I speak of is real. He shook his head and sighed. Why do you stay here then? I cannot leave. Why? It is the right thing to do. Victor danced around the truth and refused to reveal anything substantial to me. I could ask him a million different questions, and he'd still find a way not to answer. He looked me up and down and tapped his foot. His nose scrunched as if he smelled something putrid. I fiddled with my hands, refusing to look him in the eye. My gaze shifted to the door, and Victor took notice. Would you like to bathe yourself? He asked. You have water? He laughed. I can boil some for you and give you a rag. Sure. I watched as he stood with a grunt. It took him a few moments to collect all of the materials for the makeshift bath. With a pot filled with snow, he struggled to the wood stove. I offered to help, but he declined. Apparently, he could go outside, but I couldn't. Smells like a bullshit excuse to keep me there. He was lonely. His wife was probably dead, and he had no one. Hell, I would have probably done the same. No one wants to spend the rest of their life in a frozen wasteland alone. After several minutes, steam from the water clouded the room. It made the air heavy and filled my nose with cotton balls. I'll grab you some clothes, Victor muttered as he vanished into his bedroom. My gaze shifted to the door once more. I was quicker than him. Oh, I could have left right then. Victor hobbled back into the living room, his usual look of disdain plastered across his face. He wouldn't have survived a life in the theater. Victor handed me the clothes, and I took them into my calloused hands. Enjoy. I nodded and set the clothes into the crook of my arm. The heat of the wood stove suffocated me the closer I got. I reached to grab the pot and immediately winced. Fuck! The skin on my hands screamed in searing pain. The old man laughed, and I glared at him. What a dirty old bastard. I muttered a few obscenities under my breath, took the clothes he gave me, and used them as pot holders. Carefully, I made my way to the bathroom with the pot in hand. Every few seconds, bits of boiling water splashed onto my foot, and I grit my teeth in pain. The steam made it impossible to clear the small distance. Consequently, I received a few more burns. Once I finally made it to the bathroom, the pot dropped on the floor with a thud as I let out the breath I held. Steam rolled off the boiled water and encapsulated the room. Peeling off my top was a challenge. The shirt had nearly fused with my freeze-dried skin. I winced in pain as the fabric snagged a few scabs that formed alongside my back. I let out a sigh of relief as I discarded the rancid to the side. My hands toyed with the hem of my jeans as I anticipated a task far worse in comparison. I pulled down my underwear and pants. To my surprise, they came off with no issue. My jeans were shucked off and kicked away from me. I pulled the only stool in the room over. Its legs scratched into the wood, leaving tiny marks in the floorboards. The antique stool creaked under my weight as I sat down with a grunt. The smell of the room was pungent, a grotesque mix of decayed wood and body odor. A scowl sat permanently on my face as I inspected the length of my body. From nearly head to toe, I was covered in impenetrable grime. Eons of dirt packed on my skin in layers, with a few swipes of the wet rag. Streams of dirt trailed down my legs onto floor. Dank water pooled around my malformed feet. My toenails had been smashed from hiking boots that were far too small. Popped blisters covered my heels and the balls of my feet. I denied myself the luxury of picking at the skin. Infection was a guarantee out here. More of the filth poured down my pasty skin. Slowly, my old flesh was becoming more apparent. The rag squelched against my skin as I dragged it up from my ankle. Underneath a layer of muck was a congealed mess of blood and hair. I leaned forward, poking at my right calf. The wound was far worse than I had imagined. I hadn't dared to look at it since I'd made it to the cabin. The rag drifted over the scratch on my leg, and I hissed in pain. Victor was right. It was furious. Dark veins that looked like scratches of graphite danced under my skin. They trailed up my calf all the way to my groin. The wound was a deep shade of plum, one that I had never seen accompanying an injury. A thick leather-like scab formed over the top, covering the wound entirely. Still, it had its own heartbeat, throbbing every time I tried to wipe away the dirt. I let out a shaky sigh, dizzy from the pain. I sat there in a pool of my own dried blood, muck, and grime, and shrank into myself. Was it worth it, leaving my wife and kid, my family? Was it worth it traveling thousands of miles to the middle of butt-fuck nowhere? Was it worth it, losing a piece of myself to the wild? I was an impoverished assistant professor trying to finish my dissertation. It had taken me years of saving to even get to Oymycon. I wasn't some well-established researcher with the assets of a billionaire. I was just a measly, pathetic man who was desperate to experience a world outside of civilization. Being miles away from working toilets and electric-heated houses made me regret every decision I had made thus far. It took me 10 or so painful minutes of scrubbing to clear away all the filth. The heat of the rag, water, and room started to get to me, along with my self-deprecating thoughts. I felt myself droop forward and had to stop periodically to catch my bearings. The room spun around me like I downed tens of beers. A thick film of sweat formed on my forehead and dripped down my cheek. Nausea pulled at my stomach as I tried to stand and haphazardly swayed from side to side. The rag dropped to the floor with a splat as I fell toward the sink. I steadied myself, and the cold steel soothed my seething hands. With heavy breaths, I tried to calm myself. Eyes met my own in the mirror hanging on the wall. The man who stared back at me was a stranger. His eyes were hollow, and his cheeks were gaunt. All of the meat I had on my bones had sloughed off over the weeks. I dragged a rough hand over my face and watched the skin stretch with ease. I showed my teeth, snarling at my reflection. They were yellowed and glared at me. I was reminded of my newly feral nature. Jesus, I whispered to myself as I stepped away from the mirror. In the reflection, behind me, bouquets of dried flowers hung off the wall. Arrangements of mugwort, iris, dandelions, and bluebells stared back at me. Underneath was a shaky wooden table with a framed photo of an elderly woman. Beside the photograph was a whittled wolf made of dark wood. I decided I'd spent enough time gawking at the old man's knickknacks and should start dressing myself. Putting on my clothes while nauseated was practically impossible. I fell from side to side as I tried stepping into the pair of pants Victor provided. They were tight around my thighs, the fabric nearly splitting in two. The sweater he gave me was scratchy and smelled of stale bread. I threw it on, grimacing at the feeling of wool on my wet skin. Once I opened the door to the living room, a waft of icy air engulfed me. A sigh of content escaped my lips. No more was my body aflame. My eyes glanced around the room in anticipation. It was empty. There was no sign of Victor, and no prepared meal. A frown set on my face as hunger lingered in the depths of my belly. I rested a free hand over my stomach and grimaced at the wool scratching my palm. Fire from the wood stove cracked, serving as the only sound in the cabin. Heat from it crept across the room, excusing the draft from the front door. Daylight slinked through the slit of the curtains onto the hardwood floor. A sliver of light crawled through the room onto my foot. Sunlight on my needy flesh. I closed my eyes. I was only a few steps away from being outdoors. Outside, traveling birds who endure the Arctic winds would sing praises of my escape. Wolves would yip and howl together, adding bass to the lifted sounds of the tundra. I would run, with the wind splitting my skin and the sun burning my face. God would see my resilience, and he would recognize the horrors I had endured. He would reward me with a belly full of stew and a life of never-ending pastries. Kate would never go hungry, Rosie would never be bored, and I would never be lonely. It would be a life well-deserved after all of this. I dropped my head and opened my eyes. A part of me thought that somehow I would have been outside. What a foolish juvenile thought. Still, I stood in a stranger's home on the outskirts of a small, forgotten village, no closer to my salvation. There would be no saving grace. There would be no God. Victor's bedroom swung open. My brows furrowed as I watched him fall into the living room. He clasped his chest, struggling to keep himself upright. His liver-spotted hand grabbed the arm of the couch for leverage as his face contorted in pain. Grunts escaped his mouth. He banged his cane against the floor with a force that nearly broke the wood underneath it. I stepped toward him, hoping to steady his unreliable stance. "Stop," he wailed. "Back." He waved a hand at me. "Bottle. Hand me bottle." He pointed his cane at the dining table behind me. I turned around, quickly trying to find what he was gesturing at. "Now." I grabbed the bottle with haste, opened it, and took a single pill out. Then I handed it to the struggling man. He clamored to drop it into his mouth and fought to swallow it. He leaned his back against the wall and took in a few deep breaths. "I'm lying down. Leave me alone." His voice was weak, barely audible. "Are you okay, Dash?" He cut me off with a stern voice. "Leave me alone. Stay in here," he demanded. Victor shook as he tried to open the door behind him. I grabbed the knob and pushed it open. He muttered no thank yous, no goodbyes. He just left. I watched as the door slammed in my face. The weak sounds of a frail old man struggling to his bed were emitted through the door. His cane fell to the ground with a loud bang. The bed spring squeaked as groans left his feeble body. That door was going to be shut for a long while. I slowly backed away, registering what had just happened. Victor seemed incredibly unwell, and my first instinct was to pry. I had to remind myself that this man was my captor, not a sick grandparent. This was my only chance for a life outside walls. I rushed to the old man's closet. It opened with a piercing creak. My eyes scanned the cramped room for anything that could be used for warmth. I pulled out 2 coats and my tiny pair of hiking boots. Inside, my shoes were a pair of crusty old socks. I unrolled them and forced the socks and boots onto my maimed feet. It took a lot of grunting and grimacing to squeeze into those torturous shoes. The old man's jacket fit, like a glove, and hugged my biceps. It constrained some of my larger movements, but contained the heat of my body. My old coat slid right over the top with ease. I let out a shallow breath as my face flushed from the excessive heat. Then I bent over and groaned as I tried to pick up my wadded gloves. In no time, my body was bound like a sausage roll, ready to pop if I took too deep a breath. The hood of my jacket hung over my head, obscuring some of my vision. A thick wool scarf covered my runny nose and chapped lips. My eyes would be the only things exposed to the harsh elements. I reached for the doorknob and momentarily stopped myself. Maybe it was too dangerous to leave. Maybe Victor was being sincere. Surely this was just the ramblings of a deranged man. Somehow, in his mind, he had transformed some cultural folktale into a horrific reality. I could not stop when the end was right there. I could not let the fear take me over. My suffering would finally cease, whether that be from the icy storm that screamed outside or the alleged monster that waited for me. I would be home or I would be dead, but I would be free. It hit me. It hit me like a bullet to the brain. The sun, the wind, the smells, the world, it all hit me. But there were no birds. There were no wolves. There were no foxes, no bears, no reindeer, no cattle. There was nothing but the wind rattling the branches as scant trees smacked together furiously. I was the only thing in the forest. It was just me. Snow flurried around my body and stuck to my clothes. The water in my eyes nearly froze, forcing me to blink away the ice. I knew that I didn't have enough layers for the weather, but the cold didn't bother me. My joints didn't ache, and my muscles felt relieved from the dropping temperature. I felt irrevocably at peace in the icy wasteland. I took another step. Already my feet ached, but I didn't care. How could I? How could I think of anything but beautiful Kate and lovely Rosie? How could I not cherish the world that somehow still existed outside those walls? My scarf flapped with the wind, forcing me to hold it close to my face. I felt the skin under my eyes frost over. The thick layer of snow barely crunched under my feet. If I took a light enough step, I could skirt right over the surface. It was far too cold for a beautiful powdery snowfall. No, it was but a thick ice that could cut right through your skin. Icicles would rain from the sky and encompass the land. I kept my head low and my steps consistent. Why had I felt the urge to release myself from my clothes? Why did I feel the need to drop into the tundra and succumb to the boreal? I lifted my head, hoping I had made some good progress, expecting to see a field of white. I stopped, frozen. The lifeless body of a wolf stared at me. A thick layer of ice encapsulated it entirely. Its yellow teeth peeked out from under its lips, almost forming a snarl. Impossibly so, it was upright, as if still alive. I pulled the coat close to me and backed away. Its eyes followed my steps, judging my insecure steps. A crimson trail followed the creature and bloomed around its paws. It had been injured. I swallowed the spit accumulating in my mouth and shivered. I looked down at my hand and peeled the glove away from my skin. My wrist was already a pale, sickly shade of white. Fuck, I said to myself. Ahead of me, there was nothing but ice and snow. I looked behind me, and I realized I had barely left the old man's front yard. The cabin beckoned me, and I knew I had no choice but to turn around. There was no way I would make it to the village and not succumb to the freezing temperatures. I would have to start walking back to the cabin and lower my head in shame. As I took a few steps forward, cracks emitted throughout the plain, forcing me to stop. Sounds of trees falling and being ripped from the frozen ground erupted in the air. Cracks and crashes coaxed me to turn around. I looked behind me. The trees stood no more and decorated the snow, fallen from unknown causes. One tree survived, strong and unwavering. I kept walking to the cabin, my pace speeding up. Behind me, the impossibly large fir tree beckoned my attention. There was no chance that something like that could grow successfully in such horrifying conditions. I could not be distracted. The cabin was close. The thought of going back inside, in overwhelming heat, made my stomach turn, while it tickled the back of my tongue. I wanted to stay out there. I wanted to drop to my knees and lick the snow from the ground. But that tree, Something about that tree scared me more than the thought of being stuck in the blazing cabin with Victor. Snow crunched behind me. I was being paranoid. There was nothing out there. Nothing could survive out there. Nothing natural. The door was right in front of me. I was one door away from being back inside. But I couldn't. I had to turn around just to see. What awaited me was that tree. That 2-story tall tree sat there and stared at me. Its pitch-black branches were decorated with white frozen needles. Whenever the wind rushed across the snow, it shook as if it were cold itself. I reached my hand out for the knob, but kept my eyes on that tree. A gale nearly blew me over as I held the door for stability. Maybe there was something behind it. A sharp cry echoed throughout the frozen prairie. Animalistic, like the guttural cry of a pained elk. The call pierced my ears. Goose pimples glazed over the tops of my arms and made my blood run cold. It cried out again in an almost triumphant roar. That's when I opened the door and slammed it behind me. The creature cried out once more and was far closer than before. Its bugle rattled the windows, nearly breaking them with a piercing frequency. I ripped off my gloves and threw them onto the couch. I grabbed the saw from the counter and nearly dumped its entire contents in front of the door and window. My tears were able to thaw and gradually decorated my cheeks. The eerie yowls continued, ending with low grunts. I ripped off my coat, along with the old man's, and sat in front of the fire. "Please, God, please," I whispered, my hands clasped together in front of me. He hadn't saved me in all my weeks out there, so why would he then? I lowered my head and let out a choked cry. My praying hands lacked any color, but caused me no pain. They shook from the cold and fear. The fire boiled my blood and made my skin sear in pain. But I sat there anyway, retinas burned by roaring flames. I knew no hymns, no prayers, no words of protection. I knew no religion, no stories of the Bible, no patron saints to pray to. Maybe God didn't come, because I didn't know how to call. Over time, the cries slowly faded away. It left a tinnitus in my ear that was impossible to ignore. I didn't dare pull myself away from the fire out of fear. Minutes would pass, and the old man would not join me. He was still asleep, clueless to what had ensued. I eventually ripped off my crushing boots and let my aching feet stretch out. A shaky sigh left my lips as I wiped my damp cheeks. The heat made me feel sick again, but I needed to burn away every feeling of fear I had. I needed to forget the world outside and remember that this was my life. This was my world. The fire cracked and spat embers at me as my body drooped more and more. My breathing slowed and my anxieties dissipated. I was drained of all energy, too exhausted to worry or cry. I fell to my side. My body contorted into a fetal position on the floor as I tucked my arm under my head. The heat made my body swelter, but I didn't care. I was asleep, inside thick walls made of old lumber. I was safe from whatever protected its territory outside. Nothing could reach me, behind a door, behind thick piles of salt.